All right, welcome to another episode of the Middle-Aged Metalhead. And today, Abhi and I are going to be rounding out the top 20 releases of 2025. We're going to be sticking to metal and all its various subgenres. And we'll get started without wasting too much time. Hey, Abhi, how's it going?
It's going, and first of all, very happy New Year to you, GK, and a very happy
And
New
you?
Year to the three regular listeners that we have. And unlike most of our, should we say, contemporaries, GK, a lot of the people on YouTube and on print who went on and did these lists like in fucking November. This is where the real deal is. This is the only list that matters because we are doing a fair audit of releases that even came at the last week of December, as you'll find out with maybe some of our choices. So yeah, glad to kickstart 2026 with another list, and it is the list that matters, the best albums of 2025. So GK, what do we got from you? What's your number 10 pick?
Okay, number 10 for me is a band that I'd had great hopes for. Initial couple of singles, I wasn't all that sold, but this album's been a real grower for me. That's Coroner and their comeback album Dissonance Theory. Right? The more I listened to it, the more I liked it, and I know a lot of criticism is about how the sound is too modern, but honestly, after the kind of break that they had, you'd expect the band to change, right?
Yeah.
If they were still putting out uh, Grin or Mental Vortex, then I think the sound would have been a little dated for now.
Yeah.
But Dissonance Theory is, man, it sounds incredibly current, and I think it sounds great because of it. Great songwriting, and obviously, you don't have to say much about the musicianship, but these are real earworms and a fantastic comeback.
Yeah, so this was for me, it's also on my number 10 as well. So it is my, yeah. So, like I was saying, it's always going to be a very hard album to place, regardless of what the expectations were. And, the expectations were huge. They had that documentary which came out last year, or last year, I think. And it had like a massive amount of buzz in the underground, or maybe even some parts of the, you know, in the mainstream as well. But what I respected the most about Dissidence Theory is, like you mentioned, it didn't pretend that time stopped at 1993 when Grin came out. It's a very clear modern thrash metal, because modern right now, even in our circles, is thrown around as a little bit of a pejorative. But in this scenario, it is modern in the best sense of the word. It is taking that sound which Coroner established, that technical thrash sound, way forward. There are tracks like Consequence, Symmetry, which really show that balance. You get that old school flair with a lot of modern grit, and that lower tuning, the thicker production makes all of this sound very, very massive, even if the riffs are like moving at the speed of sound. I also like the mid-tempo stuff like Sacrificial Lamb, I think it's called. The Law, especially. Holy shit, the first single which came out. They have
Yeah.
this crushing, deliberate weight that gives this album that amount of breathing room without losing that intensity. But yeah, is this peak Coroner for me? No. But after a 32-year-old gap, I mean, the fact that they remain and they sound so relevant, that in itself entails that this should be on any list worth its salt.
Yeah, absolutely. And you take the album Closer, Prolonging,
Yeah.
which I think has a instrumental song with an organ solo. I mean,
Yeah.
that is pushing the limits of what this band has done, right?
Yeah.
So it really makes me want to look forward to what they've got uh, in the future as well, like
If they
their
have something
upcoming
in the future.
albums. Yeah, if they do. But this is an album I've been waiting for since they came to Bangalore Open Air a few years ago, and it's really delivered. Yeah.
Yeah, this is also an album which I would love to own as a physical copy. It's definitely out there, and I think the Bandcamp is like a 24-bit HD audio,
Yeah.
which really drives it home. So moving on to is a band called Theurgion, and called All Under Heaven. So it's the debut album from these guys. It's a side project made up of veterans of black metal bands like Chaos Moon, Krieg, and led by multi-instrumentalist LC, right? It came out on Profound Low Records, but even though it's made up of all these black metal musicians, it is not black metal. This album is actually rooted in 90s doom death. So the stuff which I know you like for a fact, I love, like think Paradise Lost, like early Paradise Lost, like Lost Paradise, Gothic, stuff like that, early Catatonia, early Anathema, October Tide. So these are long songs, funereal pacing, melancholic melodies, but it's not resigned, it's not resigned to that fate. It's not weeping at the side of a river crying. There is a sense of palpable anger here. Even though the mood is very bleak, it is also very deliberate, like I mentioned. The guitars are very thick, very layered, and the shift between that crushing doom which they bring in and that very melodic passages. There's a lot of clean singing here, which caught me by surprise the first time I heard it. There's a song here called Lavender and Silver. That was the first song which actually they released, and I think that was like a very statement-making song. It's over 10 minutes long. It slowly builds from these soft, chant-like vocals, and then it moves to that crushing doom that we know and love, right? There's also a 12-minute song called All Under Heaven, which is, again, these are very monolithic songs. Like, you wouldn't expect this out of a very of a band which is made up of black metal musicians paying homage to an era which has bygone, and it's maybe in some circles maybe done to death or maybe even extinct. It's very ambitious, it's very atmospheric, and it's absolutely worth your time if this style speaks with you. So there is something very earnest I felt about this album, and it gets my number 10 pick for album of the year.
Yeah, good stuff. For me, generally, 2025 was a disappointing year when it came to straight up death doom and even traditional doom for that matter. But yeah, this was one of the few standouts for me. Solid, solid album.
What do you have number 9?
Number nine is the debut album from this Danish band called Scimitar. So
Oh,
their album is called Cemeterium 1. And what we have here is basically heavy metal. It's like complex, traditional heavy metal, but with a slight black metal touch, I guess. And you could call it blackened heavy metal, but that would be simplifying their sound
yeah.
because it is quite complex. It's like what it really reminded me of was like a heavy metal version of something like Negative Plane, where
Absolutely.
you have the black metal ethos, but it's delivered in a very traditional heavy metal way. And this was a trad heavy metal album that really got me excited after a long while. The vocals might be your mileage might vary on the vocals because they are all mostly delivered clean and could be a bit of an acquired taste. But if you've never heard this band, haven't heard this band yet, definitely check it out. Cemeterium 1 by Scimitar.
Yeah, for me it was like Negative Plane through the eyes of the devil's blood. I think that for me that was the first thing that struck because of the female vocals, that very 60s occult kish, but without it going towards the side of parody. And this was an album which I immediately loved, because I love that kind of sound. Devil's Blood is one of my all-time favorite bands, and from the opening moments, it takes that very dangerous black metal energy. I think GK, it's like that an album that we discussed during a Halls video. It's a Phil Tugas project. I will not give spoilers, but it's like that. The rapper is black metal, but I think it's made up. It's
Yeah.
more of a sum of its parts, because the rhythm section here keeps everything pulsing forward instead of making it very chaotic like some black metal bands do. I think the vocals, in my opinion, are the real wild card here. It's one
Hmm.
of those breathless trance-like deliveries. It's that ritualistic feel. It's almost like you're overhearing something. That's something which Devil's Blood really does well, where you're overhearing something which you're not supposed to. And the flow of this album is fantastic. It doesn't overstay its welcome, even though it's like some 45-50 minutes long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. There are some 8 or 9 songs, and by the time the record closes, everything feels very earned. It's a very well paced album. So it's right now there's a lot of conversation about bands like Mesa. I feel these are the type of bands which should get that kind of attention, and we could not let the this episode end without at least one of us thupping on this fucking Mesa, man. What the fuck was going? What is
Hmm.
it that they're doing?
Let's do a separate episode for most overrated albums of 2025 because, yeah, fuck, I think that is some seriously overrated stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scimitar rule. Yeah.
And number eight is an album. I don't know where you stand on this album, GK. So maybe you and I can have like a separate debate on this episode. But that is Blut Aus Nord's Ethereal Horizons,
Mhm.
and I've been championing this album. I even attended, I mean, digitally, the live hearing session with Vince Val and company they did, and my jaw was on the floor. It was like some 1 a.m. at night, and I remember writing on the group that I don't think a lot of you will like it, but the people who will like it will really love it because it's all about atmosphere here. They are not doing anything which is brutal. They are not doing anything which they're not even exploring stuff that they did in Undreamable Abysses, which came out a few years ago. It's this album is about being a little patient. It's about trusting the listener, which is something which Vince Val, if you read some interviews around Ethereal Horizons, that is what he insists on mostly. And by this point, I don't think Blut Aus Nord of all bands, they don't need to prove anything. This is the 16th full-length album. Came out on Debabu Morty in November, end of November, starting of December, and it feels like this is a band which is carefully surveying the ground that they have helped shaped with albums like Work That Transforms Gods, Mort, Memoria Vesta 2. Because this album, and I named these three albums because this is what this album sounds like as a culmination of. It is not harsh, it is not confrontational, at least not by their elevated standards. It's a heavily leaning album on melody, on repetition, and on immersion. The dissonance is still there. I mean, that is something which we've come to expect from Blut Aus Nord, but it's softened, reshaped, and woven into something which is more expansive and leans more into cosmic, which they have been exploring for the past 4 or 5 albums. I think the riffs here are very long, very hypnotic, favoring harmony over abrasion. It will remind you of Hallucinogen. It will remind you of Memoria Vetusta. It will remind you of even 777 Cosmosophy. And none of it feels like stitched together. It all feels like a part of its whole. There are songs like The End Becomes Grace. One of the favorite songs of this year is What Burns Now Listens. Even the ambient interlude, it's Twin Suns Reverie, I think it's called. That balance between that beauty and that shadow is basically the thesis statement of this record. And I think this is an album which you cannot listen to just one song and you can't listen to it piecemeal. You have to listen to it as a whole. It's a very much a front to back listen, and it's not a very immediate album which you can access. It will take some time for you to appreciate it, but when it hits, there's nothing like it because there is no other band in the scene currently like Blut Aus Nord. It's beautiful, it's confident, it's thoughtful, it's deeply emotional and deeply atmospheric. Absolutely magnificent album. Your thoughts, Chike?
Yeah, strangely enough, I like the early singles that came out, and I was quite looking forward to this. But as an entire album, it didn't really work for me. I'm not a yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I'm not a huge Blood Aus Nord fan. I like the early stuff. I love work which transforms God. I really liked Hallucinogenesis. But the last one, the one before this, also, I'm not a huge fan of. And this one, I don't know, it felt like a little too ambient for me. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it is because this is a band which is it's kind of weird that this is a band which I mean Vince Val writes a lot of lyrics but doesn't use any, which is kind of strange. So, but yeah, this all album also does not have a lot of lyrics. It's just soundscapes, and it has that tremolo picking and all of that, but it is aiming for larger and grander things. I thought, at least So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
I
seemed more
love that shit.
focused on creating a mood.
Yeah,
Maybe I think that was a bridge too far for me. At least with this band, that wasn't what I was looking for.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have at where are we on number 8?
Okay, number eight is probably the worst album name of the year. Atmospheric death metal band. This is their second album. The band is Jade. The album is Mysteries of a Flowery Dream. Right? I don't know where this album title came from, but man, this album rules. It's like atmospheric death metal, like I said, a little bit dissonant. Maybe this time around on this album, a little more melodic as well. but Jade are pretty much doing their own thing and forging their own sound. So really looking forward to where this band goes next. But for now, 2025, this was a killer album.
I think the Spanish scene in general, it's very underrated. I mean, Spain this year had two bands release like some mega albums. One was Jade, the other one was of course Titan Blood. This is an album which I actually had to sit with. There's a lot of tension creating in this album, and they do it through that atmosphere. They're all about, again, a band which is all about mood, but it's more immediate than say a Blut Aus Nord. And there is, when I was listening to this, it actually reminded me a lot of Pink Floyd. And I, I thought like, fuck, are we entering? What was that piece of shit band's name? Blood Incantation.
Blood
Are we
Incantation.
yeah, are we entering Blood Incantation levels of wankery? And actually, it's not, But like I mentioned, it's an album I had to sit with for a while. And the vocally also, the switch between growls and those unexpected clean passages.
Yeah,
It's never showy. It's more expressive. It's not like, come pay attention to me. Look at me. Look at my album cover. Like fucking Blood Incantation did and the PR team did. It's one of those records where you can tell like a lot of thought went into the sequencing and the pacing and the way it's recorded, and even the album title. Yeah, yeah. These guys. I mean, even song titles are like Shores of Otherness and then
yeah.
fucking Star Shelter. If you set, these are album titles which the music which my wife listens to have, yeah. So, so it's immersive. It's not without being exhausting. Essentially, is what I'm trying to say, which is not very easy to do when it comes to atmospheric death metal, or even there are sprinklings of doom here as well, which I felt was extremely well done. But my
Yeah, I
turn.
think the big difference between something like Jade and Blood Incantation, even if the influences are the same, the songwriting is so well integrated. With Blood Incantation, it's a death metal part, a Pink Floyd part, back to a death metal part. With Jade, the Pink Floyd or the psychedelic, atmospheric, even the post rock bits are all integrated into their death metal in a much more inventive and smoother way. So I think that's why they really stand out. But
Achha,
yeah, let's go to your next pick.
so at number seven is a record that I felt was more emotional heavier, or rather emotionally heavier than I feel most bands, barring one band which I think would be on your list. Barring that, I think it's emotionally heavier than any other band or album that we'll speak about, and that's Drudkh with Shadowplay. It was released in March, I think, on Seasons on Mist, and this is their 19th, or sorry, this is the 13th full-length album, arriving 3 years after All Belong to the Night. Yeah, 3 years after All Belong to the Night. I think this album lives firmly in Drudkh's atmospheric and pagan black metal lineage. You have a little bit of Hate Forest creeping in as you do. But if you loved their previous albums like Autumn or Blood in Their Wells, you are right home here. The focus is like recent Drudkh albums. They haven't. It's not on speed. It's not on aggression. For that, you have Hate Forest. At least not in most of the time. In this album, it's about mood. It's about melancholy, and it's about preserving a memory, which I thought was extremely important. I think. Or in my opinion, I feel Shadowplay deals with a lot of exile, the feeling of exile, of people losing that land where they are, with a lot of loss of life, death, property, and that space that exists between silence and that perpetual violence that Ukraine finds itself in. They never really explain these things directly. They have been firmly they've been quiet all this while, but given this ongoing reality in Ukraine, you can feel that weight behind this album, and it feels unavoidable. You can't talk about this band and their projects without getting into the politics of it all. I think the album, like I said, leans very into slower, more contemplative songwriting. There are long, mournful melodies. I mean, the first song, Scattering the Ashes, you can actually hear someone digging a grave. And it feels very close. It hits you very closer to home, especially if you've seen that kind of conflict firsthand. It feels very closer to, say, an early Alva than most traditional black metal. The Eve, I feel, is the emotional centerpiece of the album for me. There are those twin guitar leads, that's bittersweet, and it feels very deeply human. even when they do turn up their intensity on songs like Fallen Blossom, I feel that which is the only aggressive track here, and which you can see, that this guy is also the guy behind Hate Forest. I think it recalls cuts like a Faro cut shot with those blasting blast beats and rawer energy that briefly break this album's meditative spell. I feel this is a very emotionally heavy album, and I would highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, great stuff. Like one of my favorite Drudkh albums. I've listened to this a lot since it came out. Didn't put it on my list because I knew you would have it on yours.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, terrific stuff.
Yeah, and just for all the listeners, there's a lot of cross pollination that GK and I had on our list. So a lot of albums that I might talk about, GK also may have thought about on this list, and we spoke about it so that we get to speak about more albums. But Coroner and one other album, it was very difficult to keep out of mind as well because I absolutely love that album. What do we have next, GK?
Okay, number seven is the seventh full-length album from, I guess, the pioneers of slam and brutal death metal. This is Internal Bleeding, their 2025 album, which is Settle All Scores, right? Sometimes all you need is a hammer to the head. And for 30 minutes, Chris Pavalis and his band just delivered. I mean, I had so much fun with this album. I wouldn't call it path breaking or innovative or anything. It's just internal bleeding, and they're doing what they do best. You can still see that love for old hip hop, which was there in Voracious Contempt
Mm.
way back in 1995. You can still see the massive breakdowns, like ridiculously massive, that could eat most deathcore bands for breakfast. And it's just so much fun. And at the same time, I think Enforced Compliance is the song, right? Where it is just a complete assault on the senses, but then it ends with an almost Iron Maiden like guitar harmony,
Right.
which I think was a new direction for the band. Not something that they're probably going to explore in any greater depth, but it really did wonders in breaking up a little bit of that constant aggression. And yeah, I absolutely love this. So, Internal Bleeding, Settle All Scores as is my number seven.
Yeah, so I love Internal Bleeding, and Chris Pavalis, friend of the channel by the way, uh, he actually he
I
I
hope
heard a
he
couple of
knows
his.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll clip this and I'll send it to him. Barracuda 77 something on Instagram. But yeah, coming back to this album, I think this album is exactly what you see on the tin. It does exactly what it promises, and that can be the highest compliment that I can give them. Right from Intangible Pact, I think it's just pure slamming violence, and I hate using that fucking word. Yeah, slam. It's just such a bad word for old school death or death adjacent metal. But yeah, Enforced Compliance, yeah, is one song. A Crown of Insignificance is another song, which shows that and where is that hardcore influence on its sleeve, because these guys also came out of that era. And Chris Pavalis also mentioned in one of the interviews that he's a huge Black Sabbath fan, so he wanted to have like a lot of Black Sabbathy parts on this album. So if you want that kind of through line, that is also there if you look hard enough. But what I love most about this album, and it goes with this album title, is that Settle All Scores means that Internal Bleeding still sound very, very pissed off. It doesn't feel like a legacy band who's releasing an album on autopilot, unlike like some bands, uh, you know who name their albums Parabellum but can't fucking bust a grape in a fruit fight. It feels confrontational, it feels claustrophobic, and it's unapologetically New York death metal. It's fucking brilliant. I absolutely love this album, and if you wanted slam, this album actually slams, and this delivered on all fronts. Yeah. Fantastic album.
Chuck Billy and the boys really hurt you, huh?
Man, there was. I think we should. right at the towards the end, I think we should do an album, or rather, we should just discuss a few albums that actually disappointed us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Let's get to your number six as well, so that we come on the same level.
Number six is, yeah, I think both of us are going to have a lot to say about this. Zeicrydeus, La Grande Heresy. So Phil Tugus's band again. Phil Tugus, of course, from a whole bunch of bands from Cathylis, Atramentum. I think he was on the last Void Ceremony as well, which came out in 23
Three.
or 23, yeah. And fantastic songwriter. What we have here is basically black metal, but uh, yeah, like Abhi was saying earlier, it's like a black metal rapper, but what's inside is traditional heavy metal. There's thrash, there's all sorts of different influences. Just a great album. But I'll let you speak more about this.
Yeah, so this album is a little bit higher on in my list. So we will come back to this again. But yeah, an absolutely magnificent album. And this is an album which, it's an album which I almost listen to every week since the time it came out. It has just stuck with me. And I think only a very few albums managed to have that staying power with me this year. Like a work of art, I would think. And I'll be very surprised that if Worm, which is his next release, Foreverglade, or no, Foreverglade was the last album. The latest Worm album, whatever the name is, the Necro Palace or something of that along those lines. So he's the new guitarist for Worm, and I'll be very surprised if the new Worm album doesn't end up on this list next year, because the three songs that I've heard, holy fuck, man! I mean, and they have Marty Friedman on guitars as well on one track. It's one of my most anticipated releases of next year, and Phil Tugus, in my opinion, I can do no wrong. The guy's like one of the modern heroes. Number five on my list, or was it number six? Yeah, I think number six, and this is where my list becomes a little more slanted towards the heroic side of metal that I really love. Fer De Lance with Fires on the Mountainside. A Chicago-based band. This is their second full-length album released through Cruz de Sul in June or July 2025. And that label in itself tells you all that you need to know. The band lives, breathes, looks like it breathes epic metal, and they are not subtle about it, which is something I absolutely love. Don't half-ass it. Full ass it to a complete next level, to the next degree. Stylistically, it sits in the intersection of epic doom, of classic heavy metal, of classic power metal, with a little bit of that battery style Viking metal also coming in. You can hear shades of Candlemas, like I said, Manowar, Blind Guardian, the Hammerheart era of Battery. It never feels like a checklist. A lot of bands tend to do that. It comes across as like like you're ticking off some of your influences. These guys, they marry all of this together. The frontman MP Papai is, I think that's what his name is, a huge part of why it works, and his vocals cover a wide range from this rough, chesty to full-on heroic power metal wails. He sounds convincing in every mode. Even the opening track, Fires on the Mountainside, is a 13-minute statement, right? There are flamenco-inspired guitar harmonies here. There are a lot of massive doom riffs. There are folk-inflected passages, battery-style Viking choirs. It's just ambitious, a little indulgent, and exactly what it needs to be. It needs to sound like it does. Even the shorter tracks like Fire and Gold, I think, is a flashy guitar forward piece. It doesn't pretend to be anything else, which is something which I love. And it's produced by Arthur Risk from Eternal Champion. And it doesn't need a better stamp of approval than those guys. I mean, it's just relentless in force. It's clearly influenced by classic Manowar, like I said, that style of power metal, and it keeps those long songs moving forward. This is not a minimalist record. This is not a record like, say, a Blut Aus Nord, where it's going for mood. This wants you to feel grand. This wants you to add that amount of dramatic in your life, and occasionally it can get a little ridiculous, but it fully commits to that vision. It's like a band realizing exactly how big they want to sound and going for it without hesitation, and that is the only reason why this album works. Full fucking conviction, 666%.
Yeah, killer album. Really, really good stuff. I think when it comes to epic heavy metal, this was the album of the year for sure. Okay, breaking into the top 10. This band's from Poland playing progressive death thrash, I guess. Species. This is their second album,
Yeah.
Changeling. Just really, really fantastic musicianship. But again, a prog band that incorporates their influences so well into their songs that it doesn't feel like cut and paste at all. Which is like a very common complaint I have with bands that are full on prog. And this album just has killer riffs, great songs, the musicianship that will absolutely dazzle. And there's a sense of humor as well. If you look at these guys in their videos with their Hawaiian shirts and whatnot, and it's just a lot of fun. Like I haven't had this much fun with a proggy death thrash or even just a proggy thrash album in a long, long while. Fans of Atheist Watchtower, I think, will find plenty to love on this one. Definitely must listen.
Yeah, was it the Hawaiian shirts that swung it your way?
Totally, yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I obviously it's also another album which I really liked, but and this album is ridiculous. It's and in the best way. It's so jam packed with ideas. It even gave me a little bit of Voivod type of feel, like very early Voivod kind of feel, which and the most and the thing with about even the bands which you referenced, like Atheist, Watchtower. What surprised me most is while it has that DNA, it is also very catchy. There is a
Yeah.
song called Inspired Creation, and there's a song called In Essence or The Essence, something like that. They have hooks that stick even while the band is doing some wild tempo shit. So the vocals are, of course, can be a little divisive. That is, it took me a while to get used to those vocals, but they add character, and that is the best compliment I can give. This album doesn't sound like anyone else. It won't sound like anyone else, and it does, and it matters because I think along with Species, along with Void, who released another great album, it's the vocals which takes it across the line. Void is
Hmm.
another great fucking release, and I think Species and Void had that intense, over the top vocal delivery style, which really took it to the next level. I felt.
Yeah. Void is a good shout out. Another terrific thrash metal album from 2025. Yeah.
So next up is my number five,
Five. Yeah.
and moving on to normal proceedings. Black metal from Greece. Acherontas with Nikia, the necromantic patterns. Long-standing pillars of Greek occult, Greek black metal, along with Rotting Christ, Varathron, all of these great fucking bands. Released this album came out in April earlier this year. Nikia, the necromantic patterns, feels like it's the work of a band which knows exactly who they are. Every track is intentional. It has that drawing from the themes of necromancy, astral travel, and ancient Hellenic wisdom. This is a band which I feel shares a lot of, at least theologically, they're very similar to Nightbringer, if not sonically. I feel philosophically there is a lot of, similarities there. And musically, this is symphonic, melodic, heroic sounding black metal filtered through that occult lens that Acherontas usually has. The riffs are big, triumphant, as you would expect from a Greek band, but they're layered with that subtle amount of dissonance and harmony that keeps things from feeling a little straightforward. As much as I love Rotting Christ, I think that is the gap that Rotting Christ currently has. It's not enough. There is a, I mean, they're stuck in that holding pattern, and I think a band like Acherontas is something which maybe uh, sparks that creative energy in Sakis again. There are songs here, what really separates this band, I feel, is that willingness to use that unconventional texture. There are spoken word passages. In fact, the standout track of this album, which I feel is called Truth in a Pathless Land. It's a sample of Jiddu Krishnamurti. It took me like by surprise.
Yeah.
That strips down everything. It explains everything what they're trying to do, and and that would be like the furthest thing away from black metal, right? But it uses it in such a beautiful way. that it just stuck with me, and that's an album that I go back to a lot. It reinforces why Acherontas remain one of the defining voices in Hellenic black metal. Absolutely magnificent stuff, and if you can get hold of it through one of our distros, please, without even thinking, just go for it. It's fantastic, fantastic black metal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the first time an Acherontas album has really stuck with me. They've always been one of those bands that uh, I wanted to like them a lot more than I did. Like, I loved their concept, their entire visual side of things, the album art, but the whole album as a whole would never really stick. But this one was, I feel like this is where they finally, you know,
Got it together.
yeah, got it together. Just a damn good album.
Maybe going back and changing the fucking name, man. Jesus Christ, how the fuck do I search this album name? Because it's written in Greek now. That's so.
Mm.
It's almost like made me remind my. It reminded me of Prince in the 90s back
Yeah,
in the day.
yeah. Let's make it as hard as possible to search for our music.
Yeah. What do you have next?
Okay, number four is for me, this band has consistently been the most exciting death metal band, I would say, since maybe the last 10 years or so. This is, I think, their seventh or eighth full length. It's a two-man band,
Yeah.
Veilburner from the United States. The new one is called Longing for Triumph, Reeking of Tragedy. And this is just some more genre pushing death metal. At its base, it's like Morbid Angel and their Illud album, but if Illud was really, really good, and there are so many ideas happening here. The foundation is Morbid Angel, particularly, I would say, Blessed Are the Sick era Morbid Angel and those riffs, but Veilburner take that and take it into all sorts of crazy directions.
Yeah.
You could call it avant-garde, you could call it progressive, but at its heart, I feel this is just really creative death metal and a fantastic album. Love their last album as well, which was on my uh, best of last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, this year it's even higher up the list. Fantastic album. It's on Transcending Obscurity, so and they've been on Transcending Obscurity for a while now. So yeah, this is an album you need to check out.
The
Really
last two.
adventurous music.
Yeah, last two Veilburner albums have been on Transcending Obscurity, and that is how I found them like
Uh-huh.
a few years ago. I don't think there is any band currently in the scene that sounds like them.
Yeah, there isn't.
It's just out there, and it's unclassifiable. You can call it death metal, you can call it black metal, you can call it avant-garde, you can call it a lot of different things, but there is no other band that is doing what Veilburner is doing. And I honestly feel that at the seventh outing, which is Longing for Triumph, Reeking of Tragedy, this is Veilburner at the most, believe it or not, accessible.
Hmm. Quite possible, yeah.
Yeah, it is their most accessible album, and there is a song here called "Rigor and Wraith," which I think is one of my favorite songs of the year. Man, I mean, it creeps, it coils, then it just explodes. It's almost no lyrics are there. It's just mostly instrumental. It's some fantastic songwriting, and it'll make you wonder, like, how the fuck are these guys composing this?
Yeah.
No, it's one of those bands. Like, how are these two guys coming up with this? And they're very, very, very consistent. And there is no, and one unique thing about these guys is there is no side projects, there is no EPs, there is
Yeah.
no splits. They don't collaborate. It's just Veilburner all the time. There's a lot of psychedelia here as well, and I think that is what edges it for me also. There are bass lines, there are just weird leads, though it's all very chaotic, but if you just look a little hard enough, everything serves a purpose. It's not just there, it's not tacked on just to feel like, oh, look at us, pay attention to us. None of that bullshit is there. It's unsettling, 110%, but it's not chaotic.
Yeah.
It's one of
True.
those albums where there is a lot of which will reward you with a lot of repeated listens and make everything click more than it should. Even I thought Capsule, which was a brilliant album. But Capsule also had this similar feel, but this album is better than this, and probably that's probably why it's so high up your list. Also, GK is because of that accessibility factor. I think
Yeah, absolutely.
it's
And
fantastic. It's
and
such a well written album.
yeah, in terms of songwriting, like you said, this is their most accessible, and I think that's why this is also my favorite by them so far. Like I've been following this band, yeah, since Lurkers in the Capsule of Skull. I think that was also TO, right?
Yeah, Tio.
And they've been upping their game with every album after that. What was that? Duality of whatever that came out last year was really good, but man, this new one is fantastic. Just brilliant. There are parts here that could be like jazz fusion. There are parts here that could have been on a unreleased Yes album. It's crazy, but it all comes together so well that yeah, and like you said again, it really rewards multiple listens. The more you listen to this, the more you will get out of it. Yeah.
I heard a couple of interviews that they did, and they obviously the horror influences are there. They also mentioned that they were inspired by Russian literature. So, you know, so it's just next level, and I would highly recommend that people, if you're into this kind of music, just read up on the influences of these bands as well. A, you will get to discover more music, and B, you'll be more appreciative of this kind of very esoteric sounds that we are recommending. Coming to number four, um, let's get a little more darker, more harsher, a little more ritualistic, for the lack of a better word. This album, I feel, proved that pure traditional orthodox black metal can still feel dangerous, commanding, and rewarding without reinventing the genre. And this album, you will not see on a lot of lists, not a lot of poser lists will have this, and that is Darvaza's We Are Him. Uh, yeah, Darvaza is a duo. It's a two-man black metal band made up of Omega on all instruments and Wrath on vocals, and who I feel is genuinely top five black metal vocalists working currently. And if those names don't raise expectations, this album absolutely delivers with its intent. I feel their Ascending to Perdition was a great statement of intent, but I feel this one is more of like, we are one of the most important bands doing this style of black metal currently. This is firmly rooted in tradition, executed with precision and fucking confidence. There are tremolo lifts, sure. There are vicious vocals, 110%. There is blasphemous intent, sure. But this is just the foundation of this album. What elevates is how deliberate everything feels. Nothing here is wasted. Every riff is purposeful. There is no wasted motion here. There is no fat, absolutely. The album opens with that grand, almost ceremonial feel to it, with the song called Holy Blood, and that contrast, it actually sets the tone of how this album is. The vocals are exactly what you should be paying top dollar for. Some amazing vocal performances here, and one of the most striking moments of this album comes in a song called Slaying Heaven, because this is where you pay the big bucks to watch these guys, because this is where they slow it down, and it's like that mid-paced, very grueling, gritty kind of black metal. Even the closing track, the self-titled Darvaza, is pure controlled chaos. It's layered vocals, brief, clean guitars, but the final stretches almost feels like it's the world is collapsing upon itself. Production-wise, it's surprisingly clear. I think this is the best production that they've had since their last. And this album keeps showing up. Will not show up in a lot of lists, but the lists it'll show up on, it'll do that for that reason alone, because it sounds focused, it sounds commanding. It solidifies Darvaza as one of the strongest modern black metal bands currently, and that is why it's on number 4 on my best of 2025.
Yeah, great album. I haven't heard this as much as I probably should have, but the 3, 4 spins that I gave it, yeah, sounds tremendous. So yeah, my number three is the latest one by Innumerable Forms, Pain of Fulgence. Justin Detour, multi-instrumentalist, most commonly known for being a drummer with Summerlands and a whole bunch of other bands. Started off this particular band pretty much as a one-man act, doing everything himself. but he's got a full band put together now. What we have here is really crushing Death Doom. I mean, their previous album, Philosophical Collapse, was fantastic. This one is darker, it's heavier, and maybe a little more doomy, but at the same time, a little more death metal as well. It's like he's managed to somehow up his game on both fronts, and an album that has been pretty much on repeat listen right through the time it came out. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with Innumerable Forms prior to this album. This was my introduction to these guys. But even though I loved Summerlands is one of my favorite bands, and that album which they had, the last album that they have, I thought it was a lost Ozzy Osbourne album, and I loved it so much. But and if I can blame them for not coming up with new material, I don't have any complaints, because if they can come out, churn out stuff like Pain Effulgence, because the riffs here is are massive. This album is something which just hangs up over your head. It creates a sort of chaotic, suffocating atmosphere. The title track, I feel, it's for me, it's a standout, because especially when that colossal riff, that it comes back, that meme you must have seen, the riff but comes back slower halfway with that werewolf tearing your face off. I get that feeling from that song. What I love is how patient this album is, and the songwriting is. There's nothing here is feels rushed. They are not going anywhere. It's very, very slow, doomy, and the band just lets the riff breathe and stay in place without going anywhere. It's not funeral doom, not that pacing at least, but it is slow. It is very deliberate. It is crawling, crushing. It'll just hang over your head like like something which just doesn't want to get you up or something like that. It's fantastic. It's a tremendous album. My number three would be US black metal band, a band which I have loved for a very, very long time, and a band that initially was lost in the mix because they didn't know what they wanted to be. But it's a band who I really wanted to succeed, because there was so much potential, and that band is called Lamp of Murmuur, the Dreaming Prince in Ecstasy. Like I said, one man black metal band from the United States, and this album dropped late last year on Wolves of Hades. I think first week of December is when it came out. It's a follow up to the brilliant Saturnal Bloodstorm from a couple of years ago, and it feels like a major step forward in confidence and in scope. So earlier, what these guys used to do, there were a lot of symphonic elements, symphonic influences there. They didn't know what they wanted to sound like. Sometimes they sound like Immortal, sometimes they want to sound like Emperor, sometimes they want to sound like Dimmu Borgir. But from the opening moments of this album, you can feel that this guy has finally figured it out. All of these influences are married together. There are acoustic guitars, there are pianos, there is that very vampiric feel to the music. There are keyboards everywhere, but they're smartly used. It's not a 90s kish black metal project, which a lot of people tend to uh, go towards, nowadays. The production here is fantastic. Everything is rich, everything is layered. But what makes this album so special is the centerpiece, a three-part centerpiece towards the end of the album, the Dreaming Prince in Ecstasy. It's the title three-parter. That this is where all of that influence that I've been speaking about comes into play. There is black metal, yes. There is a little bit of um, postish music as well, and there are harpsichords. There are layered vocals. They shift between aggression and elegance, and there is an entire 4 or 5 minute section which sounds like fucking Bauhaus. It's post-punk married with black metal. Absolutely feels earned instead of being tacked on. It's ambitious without losing focus, and it's just dynamic songwriting done really, really well. There are no two tracks here which feel the same. It's symphonic black metal that embraces that beauty and that desolate nature of post-punk. It's grand, it's immersive, and it's surprisingly cohesive from start to finish, something which none of the previous Lamp of Murmur albums were. I think this is the breakout album, and it should be the breakout album for this great band.
Yeah, cool. I have to listen to this one. I think I heard like maybe half the album only, but yeah, I need to go back and listen to this one. Cool. Okay. My number two.
Yeah.
Okay, number two is the second album by Sijjin, Helgen Combat. So this is an album that literally made me happy. Okay, like it wasn't even something that I can explain, but
Yeah.
life affirming, right? When you say life affirming, this was completely life affirming for me. It felt like such a loving tribute to 80s thrash, which is pretty much my favorite genre of all time. Like there's so much Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer happening here, and then uh, right at the middle of the album, there's one song called something to do with slavery and insanity. Religious insanity denies slavery, where they break into basically Black Sabbath Solitude for no rhyme or reason,
Yeah.
and it just works. And that section just blew my mind. Of course, this band comes from Necros Christos, so you know the pedigree of the musicians involved here. And apart from all the loving homage and tributes, there's some fantastic riffs. The vocals kick ass, and it's very retro in the sense that it feels like it could have come out in the 80s, but it's also at the same time very, very current and modern. And
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest plus points for this was that they recorded the album live in the studio
Mm.
with maybe like a few overdubs, and it has this gnarly, punch you in the face kind of sound that I absolutely fell in love with. Basically, the entire the concept, the music, how they did it, I just absolutely loved this album.
Yeah, and this is an album which I had to. I was ready to die on the hill that this album sucked for the very, very, very long time. And regardless of how many people spoke about this, I would always chime in. It became kind of a joke where people used to tag me every time this album was, or someone was speaking about this album. But yeah, I finally, my biggest issue was the production. But once I got over that hill, and I think I mentioned it to you as well the last time, one time a few months ago, that I finally get it. This album is just relentless. Like you mentioned, that era of thrash is also one of my favorite genres. My favorite band comes from that era. So from start to finish, Helgen Combat is just pure speed. It's aggression. It's all that good shit which you like about Slayer. It's all that good stuff that you like about Metallica. It's all the good stuff that you like about Megadeth, Testament, all of that stuff. All filler, no killer, just riffs and riffs and riffs. It's just old school without feeling lazy. The production keeps it very, very filthy, analog style of production, like you mentioned as well. And if you love that era of thrash, like that classic era of thrash, and that very early death metal energy, like say, and like a master or a fucking possessed, or even very early mantis and stuff like that, this will hit that spot perfectly. It's an album that is, for some reason, is not getting spoken of as much, and that's only because those circles are being infested by posers. But this is an album which deserves all the accolades that a fucking Deaf Heaven or some bullshit like Sumac or some other fucking garbage is getting. This is an album which deserves it. Helgen Combat, absolutely buy on day one kind of a record.
Yeah, great stuff. And your number two.
My number two is an album which was your number six, and that's Zeicrydeus with Lagra and Heresy. Debut album. You have already said what you had to say, GK, and I think stylistically this album lives in the crossroads of black metal, heavy metal, thrash. But the real hook and the clincher, and why this album is so high on my list, is my love for Hellenic black metal. It's dramatic. It has that proud big riff energy, that Greek black metal energy filtered through that heavy metal instincts. I think that is something which I love about every project that Phil Tugas is a part of. That influence comes through so much. The riffs are very gallopy. There's a lot of Iron Maiden DNA here. There's a constant sense of forward motion. There's a lot of Quorthon songwriting here. But what sets this album apart from most releases this year, barring one, is the fucking bass. Holy shit. The bass playing on this album is some unmatched. I don't think since Mortuary Drapes, Secret Sudaria did a bass playing on a black metal album blow me away so much. Instead of traditional guitar leads, Phil Tugas plays bass leads on this, and this gives this a very warm, a very muscular feel to it that you don't hear much in this genre of music. It is just such a fucking great writing on this album. It's restless. There is a lot of Greek black metal sections here that suddenly flip into new wave of British heavy metal. Then you go into epic power metal stuff, and then there is that grimy and that occult feel that you get, like profane spells and naked swords in the emerald meadows of Nath. That's an actual song title. It's a perfect example. It starts off with that full Hellenic black metal mode, and then halfway turns into something that you would not feel out of place in say a Peace of Mind or something like that. It should not work, but it does. A fantastic album. Just get it any which way, shape or form that you can. Wonderful, wonderful album. Can't recommend it highly enough. And that's number 2. There's only one album which is better. We'll get to it soon. GK, your number 1 album of the year.
My number one album of the year, fourth full length from this Canadian sludge, post-hardcore, doom, noise rock, call them what you will. Mares of Thrace, The Loss, absolutely fantastic band. I thought their previous album, The Exile, was phenomenal, but The Loss takes everything and ramps it up, and they've delivered one for the ages. I think musically you could pretty much say, yeah, they do a lot of sludge, they do a lot of noise rock, they come from a hardcore punk background, but where they really step away or differentiate from most other sludge bands is the emotional heft of these songs, right? It's incredibly emotional music. Therese Lance is, I wouldn't say a particularly gifted singer, but she's a fantastic vocalist. She can bring that emotion to these songs. Casey Graves on drums is just again a two-people band. Therese Lance on a baritone guitar, which I think she builds herself. Casey Rogers on drums, and they make a real racket. I mean, they are heavy as fuck, and it's heavy in terms of music, it's heavy thematically, it's heavy in terms of the emotion that they managed to generate. And The Loss is pretty much my favorite album of the year. You will not see this on any other list. I feel like even the sludge, stoner, doom, noise rock community is pretty much sleeping on this band. So yeah, if you're into these any of these subgenres at all, check it out. Listen to Mares of Thrace. You'll see a video for The Exile as well on this channel from a couple of years ago. Uh, and yeah, you can't go wrong. Just an absolutely fantastic band. One of the bands in sludge, which has been a very stagnant genre for a very long time, that is really pushing boundaries, I feel. If you listen to it hard enough, and you will see the punk influences, the hardcore influences, maybe even some hip hop influences. And yeah, like I said, noise rock, today is the day. Things like that. Mares of Thrace are just killing it. Listen to The Loss.
Yeah, I mean, this is thankfully a band that I discovered through this channel as well. I mean, I saw the video which you did, GK, a few years ago for The Exile, and I was just struck by how beautiful the art was, and that was why and we spoke about this in person also, that how that album was something which I could relate with completely, because I am, you know, my family is made up of immigrants. I am someone who has moved into the city, leaving a complete life behind, and stuff like that. And the loss also is very, very emotionally resonant. The Therese's vocals here are devastating. They do not feel performed. They feel lived in, and it's also, this album is about the stages of grief, right? So once you look at it from this lens, everything falls into context. These crushing sludge sections, these noise sections that are there in this album, they work because of those quiet moments that surround this album. this is an album that just doesn't sound heavy. It also means something that is heavier than that sound, and it's that emotional impact that every note of this album carries. And honestly, this is the kind of album that deserves a number one spot in any of those lists which you were talking about, GK. And we are dealing with an infestation of posers in all of these fucking forums. Man. That's the sad part of it. And but yeah, incredible fucking album. It's just a travesty that this band is not getting spoken of enough, but not if we have anything to do with it. So yeah, moving on to my number one. Anyone who has known me has has known that since March of this year, there is only one band that I have spoken about, that I have recommended, that I have put every release against it, and that has to be Havukruunu's Tavaslan. Um, you know, I don't say album of the year lightly. This is something that I fell in love with at the first listen. Havukruunu's every single album for me has landed personally every single year. These guys have been on my top 10 list, if not at the number one list. But I feel this is the record, which kept pulling me back month on month, year on year, week on week. And it became the obvious best album for absolutely no other reason. Conceptually, this album is historical. It deals with the revolution, the 1200s of the Tavastian, which are Finnish pagans, against the Christian invaders. So that sense of resistance, that sense of grief, of national pride, of fury is baked into every single riff of this album. Musically, this is black metal and Viking metal at its very core, but it's never stuck to one lane. Havukruunu has always had that heroic choirs and all of that tremolo riffing and that very Finnish sense of a little bit off center, always going for them. There are obvious nods to Bathory, there are obvious nods to Vindir, there are obvious nods to Immortal, but they aren't copying that old same playbook. What really stand out in this album is the fucking again the bass playing. The earlier, I think they have a new bassist. I don't know his name, but yeah, he makes a huge difference. The bass isn't here just for giving the album heft. It drives entire sections. Like the opening, of course, sets the tone with those immortal style riffs. The opening of this album is very immortal with those very chanted out vocals. It's very cold, it's very proud, and it's instantly gripping. There is a song here called Havukruunu Ya Talven Varjo. That song has an epic section there where it's the sound of thunder, and the sound of thunder hits, and there is a guitar solo that happens. I mean, some of the most epic shit ever, right? So that was the break of the album, and obviously the epic title track, Tavaslan, one of the most emotional peaks of this album. Towards the end, when after the guitar solo, there is an entire section which brings back the riff with which the song starts with. That is one of the most fuck yeah moments of I've felt all year listening to music. Some epic music. At the end of its 51 minutes, Tavaslan is an album where you will realize that there is all the dynamic shifts, all the melodic turns, every blast of aggression is earned. It's such a fantastically well paced album. Plenty of great metal albums came out in 2025. A lot of albums were impressive. A lot of albums you will see on this list. A few stuck around, and this one is an album which I can safely say is timeless and felt timeless almost immediately. Absolute number one, Havukruunu's Tavaslan.
Taskland. Oh, I liked it a lot. Maybe not as much as their previous album. I don't remember the name, but I think it's like a warrior sitting on a horse type thing,
Yeah,
right? With monochrome cover art. But this was really good. And I had no idea about the concept and all of that, but the songs are really memorable. And the thunder and the guitar solo, yeah, that immediately brought that song back to my head. But yeah, really great stuff. I think a worthy number one.
yeah. So honorable mentions, we will not mention it on this video. We will have specific, separate genre-specific videos which will come out. Maybe GK has, I think you have planned sludge and death metal,
Yeah.
and most likely I'll do something with black metal and maybe something other genres as well. Probably have someone on with me for those videos too. However, yeah. So should we do biggest disappointments, GK? What were the
Yeah, yeah.
yeah?
Let's do it.
So my number one pick with a bullet has to be Testament's Parabellum. I mean, I am as big of a Testament fan as any that you can meet. I even like the weak shit that they have put out, but Parabellum was, I don't know, they just sound tired. And with the amount of hype, I even gaslit myself into really liking it the first go around. But it's almost like even Alex Kolnick can't recover that very tired sounding songs which they have been insisting on doing since Dark Roots of the Earth. I don't know. It's getting a lot of good press. It's getting a lot of mentions in year-end lists. But then again, that has to do with poser infestation more than the quality of the. It's the legacy that they are rewarding rather than the quality of music. I feel. What about you?
Ah, Dark Angel. Extinction level event. I mean, I'm a huge Dark Angel fan, okay? Like I know the general perception of Dark Angel is that they were pretty mediocre in the 80s with maybe one minor classic in Darkness Descends, but I absolutely love this band. Like Time Does Not Heal was one of the first thrash metal albums I heard, sitting with the photocopied Xerox, rather photocopied lyric sheets and listening to that album. It was just a mind blowing experience as a kid. And this is an album that I'd been waiting for I don't know how long. And every year it was like Hoagland would be like, yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, we should have something soon, blah, blah, blah. And then they come out with Extinction Level Event. I mean, God, this was just bad. Like 10 years from now, we could still be talking about how shitty this album is.
I mean, they got the
This
album title correct. It is Extinction Level Event.
seriously, I mean, God, man, it's generic. It is no, actually, it's worse than generic. It's just badly written
Yeah.
thrash metal, right? And the vocals are pretty bad. The music is bad. It's like a band or a bunch of musicians who are completely running on fumes at this point. And it would have been better if they'd just shelved it and gone on a farewell tour or whatever they wanted to do and then said bye because the fans would have turned up anyway. But yeah, this album was just, it physically hurt me.
Yeah.
I'd say another real shitfest was the new Alice Cooper. I mean,
Oh.
I I think a bit like how you felt about Testament.
Hmm.
I kind of gaslit myself into thinking, hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I remember you
But
recommending this to
yeah, exactly. When
Zoe
it
and
came out,
myself.
I was quite excited for this when it came out. But fucking hell, man, there are some really shitty songs on this album. Like Alice still sounds okay for however old he is right now,
Hmm.
but and he put the classic lineup together, at least of everyone who's still alive, I guess.
Hmm.
And yeah, it just doesn't work. There are about fourth or fifth song into the album, it just kind of completely wore me down, and yeah, very disappointing shit.
And one last mention, and I know, this might get us a little, we might piss off one of the three listeners that we have. Um, that's Judas Priest's cover of War Pigs. I, I mean, I love Black Sabbath as much as you do. I love Judas Priest as much as you do. But that is a style that just does not marry. And the fact that it got unending amount of airplay after Ozzy passed was it just ground my gears to a nub. Yeah, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, everyone who was anyone was just reposting that fucking song over and over and over again. I was just done towards the end. I was like, fuck
Yeah.
this noise. This is garbage. This is
Mhm.
absolute garbage. Anyway, so any albums that you're looking forward to in 2026? Mayhem's coming up with new material.
Gorguts. For me, it's only Gorguts. I just hope Luke LeMay put something together. I know they've written the songs already. I know they're in the studio. I hope it comes out in 26. and one of my all-time favorite bands.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to that. Apart from that, no, not really. Nothing else.
I think I'm looking forward to Worm the most.
Huh.
I've heard 3 songs, and I think that project is shaping up to be something really, really special. It's kind of strange that they're putting it out so early in this year, because
Hmm.
I have a feeling that a lot of people might forget. But yeah, Worm is an album I'm looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to Mayhem, or rather the new Nidinger album with the Mayhem branding, considering that how Mayhem operates. And I'm looking forward to the new Ruim album. I think Ruim is in studios. Ruim is they're doing something. So hopefully some new material from that, and obviously stuff like Funeral Mist and Marduk if they decide to come up with something. So that is essentially it. That is what I'm looking forward to. And so yeah, so that does it for the best of 2025. GK, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And if you've stuck this long, you should see a couple of cards. Subscribe, check out our other content, and let us know what your favorite albums were from 2025. Have a good one. Cheers. Stay safe. Stay metal.
Yeah, and
Bye.
follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram.
Finally, see ya.